So if I am choosing to be angry at this person, why am I not surprised that someone just flicked me off in traffic? Because it's in my field. That is the radical responsibility that we can have when we look at the world and go, what the heck is happening? Well, come back to your personal responsibility and who are you being while no one's watching? That is going to accumulate your auric field, which will give you more of that you're emanating. The greatest ally that I believe that we can give ourselves is radical responsibility. The second that we blame, they made me feel this way, or because I hired them, they ruined everything, is the second that we give all of our power away, and then we become a disempowered state. We become into victim frequency, and then more things to be victim of will be emanated into our lives. There is always going to be something. Every single person has an Achilles heel. Every single person has a really deep challenge to them that is the part of them that they don't want to present to the world. How we speak about that experience will determine whether you become a victim or a creator of your reality. Usually within the seed of your greatest challenge is the superpower of your service to the world. Your greatest challenge is also your greatest gift. As soon as I saw your face, I was like, radiant. Oh my God.
I don't know.
Blindingly radiant.
It's just the treatments.
Whatever it is you're doing is working.
You think
it's
so?
like you're like walking around with a human filter on. It's real.
Stop it. What a love fest.
Real.
Stop it. You always knew we would be friends like this, though.
Treatments. Got it. I've had 2 facials my entire life. And
that's
then,
it?
That's it. Yeah, I used to wash my face with soap until like last year. Well, here's the thing is I'm over here like, right, you look like you're walking around with a human filter.
I know that like aesthetic beauty was something that you wanted to talk about. It's like a perfect parlay in, like, here we go. So that's like the culture we live in these days is just keeping up and looking the right way. And didn't you do something where you like did no makeup for a while?
I shaved my head
a makeup strike for a while or something like that too?
I did no filters. For a while, like not even swiping right for the Paris filter.
Right. Good girl. I almost never do it. Almost never.
Oh, really?
Sometimes I only do it if the person with me looks so much better. And then I think they'd probably want this.
We're going to Paris.
I've probably done that twice, but yeah, good job.
Well, I shaved my head and then I wore no makeup for a year.
When did you shave your head?
I just buzzed it.
When?
A few years ago.
Were you sober when you did it?
I had the idea while I was on mushrooms, but I was sober when I actually did it. Like, I have to shave my head and take myself to the next level of the evolution of my consciousness.
What did the mushrooms tell you?
The mushrooms were basically that. They were like, showed me a vision of me bald. And then everything that I was afraid about came up of like my beauty being placed in how I look.
Beauty is one of those things that if you have it, because you do, because you're beautiful. I didn't learn until I got sick about 4 years ago, where I was like not feeling well. I started looking worse and worse and worse. And I had this epiphany. I was like, oh my God, I totally used my looks for things, not just to even do the job, but to feel good about doing the job. Meaning like when it slipped and I still was being like requested for things, I was like, maybe I actually have skill or talent, because it's definitely not how I'm looking these days, because I don't look as good as I used to look. And it was kind of nice because it made me feel something that I hadn't felt before, but it also, I got a glimpse into, like I literally said the same, I'm like, wow, I really used my looks, didn't I? Which seems stupid because people would imagine that to be obviously the case for me because I've done so many kind of sexy photo shoots, but I never realized how much I actually relied on it. Did you ever have that kind of experience? And is that part of why you shaved your head?
I don't think you realize it until it's not there. Until I was bald and I realized actually kind of became invisible to men. Like I did not get the attention that I usually would. The contrast was also showing me how closed off I was because I didn't trust people's intentions. Right. Well, when I was bald, I felt more connected to people. I was more present with people, and I was really grateful when people gave me time and presence and connection and weren't kind of just immediately put off because I was presenting as a bald woman. So I realized actually how much more open I was because I trusted people's intentions because I wasn't attracted. So it's really interesting to recognize that. I personally think that those that are aesthetically extremely beautiful, that, you know, when you meet someone, you're like, whoa, like blinded by their beauty, it comes with a really big shadow that we don't see because we're so distracted by our 5 senses. We're so distracted by our senses picking up on this appearance in this person. And then we're so drawn towards beauty. But there's a shadow aspect, that there's a reliance on our external physical vessel that overrides the richness of authentic beauty that can only be born from within.
Yeah.
So that's why I went into the direction of shaving my head, because my whole life I had been identified in a certain way, in a certain flesh puppet, as you will, in a certain appearance. And until that was actually stripped away, I couldn't access the deeper layer of the internal, never ending wellspring of beauty that lives within everybody, no matter what genetic pool you grew into.
Of yourself, do you think, or was it more about your orientation with other people? Could be both too.
It was my conversation with myself, which leads to my orientation with other people. So how I was speaking towards myself was, if I didn't have X, Y, and Z from the outside, then I was less than, which inherently by being born, you're worthy. So that has to completely question the belief that I am worthy because of something outside of myself. So it goes directly into the eye of that, which claims your power. So that's the shift from artificial glamour to authentic beauty. Artificial glamour says that I'm beautiful because I have X, Y, and Z outside of my body. I look like this, or I have these breasts, or I have this hair, or I have this face, and therefore that's what makes me worthy, which is actually a really slippery slope, because with time that will disappear or things will shift. The only constant thing is change. So if we place our power outside of ourselves, we're on a really slippery slope, and most people do. So when we start to place it inside of being like, I'm beautiful because I let love in and I let love out, and I am genuinely of service to myself and those that are around me, and that's what gives me eternal beauty, then it doesn't matter whether we get wrinkles or we age or our body starts to do its thing with aging, because the beauty stays eternal. And you can meet somebody that is 70, 80 years old and be the most radiant, graceful, elegant human because of their capacity to love over a consistent period of time. And it's the thing that is completely overridden in today's society because of the amount of profit that comes from beauty that is artificial glamour.
Yeah. Did anybody notice anything different about you as you went through that phase, after that phase?
I started aging in reverse. I became younger. I look younger now than I did 15 years ago because vitality is activated when somebody starts to genuinely love themselves. Raw, no makeup, no hair, no identity through what it is that they create or produce, but actually through saying in my own internal voice, I love my life. I love who I am. I love how why I'm here. Well, every 75 trillion cells, they only have 2 jobs: to listen and respond. So what just happens is, yes, you're right. I love who I am. So the teeth get whiter and the eyes get clearer and the skin gets clearer and the body starts to stay at the weight that is desirable.
Yes.
Not because of the newest trend or the diet, but because the cells are just listening and responding to the internal narrative that says, I love myself just the way that I am without the external beauty. So all of a sudden you start aging in reverse. It's actually remarkable. It's a fountain of youth.
There's such a quantum element to our appearance that we just don't get yet, you know, but it's undeniable when you see someone happy and smiling and they do glow more. You're right. I mean, everything from body weight to color of the skin to the eyes, like it definitely changes. So then so then you're beautiful. You have beautiful jewelry on. You look wonderful. Your makeup looks perfect. Your hair is grown back. So talk about like the comeback into it. And ultimately, what is the role of beauty then? Why do we still use it? Why wouldn't we all just end up getting to a place where like you evolve into like, oh, I just don't ever do hair and makeup and then forget the hair because it's a pain in my butt, right? What is its role? And how did it evolve for you back into where you felt comfortable with it all?
It's always a journey, and I'm not ever speaking from a place like I've got it figured out and I'm standing on top of the mountain being like, I have conquered beauty and now I am no longer enslaved by the external.
You have.
However, I truly believe it's not about the actual thing, whether it's the makeup or the hair or the dress. It's about our relationship to it. And if I cannot go out without being fully done up, there's something for me to look at. Where if I'm an artist, I see my body as a canvas. So when I get ready in the morning, I check in and say, okay, what's the archetype that's moving through me today? Today I feel like
when you said you should wear white today?
I'm going to go white. I feel light. I feel excited. It's the Lionsgate. Let's do the hair. Let's do the makeup. Let's put the gold jewelry on because it's fun. It's a beautiful expression. And can I be with my lover, no makeup, fresh out the shower, 2 days after crying, like 2 days of crying and feeling sluggish and still feel worthy. Because that's actually where the power lies. So yes, let's play with the archetypes. Let's play with the many facets of the human experience, the multidimensional many facets of what it means to be us. Play with the archetypes that want to breathe through us with how we choose to adorn ourselves. With beautiful gold jewelry, it holds a certain frequency. With the clothing and the materials, of where they were sourced from, or who created them, or what hand sewed them, holds a charge. You travel around the world and pick up unique garments made by artisans that then you can go into your closet and it be a breathing expression of all of your travels. What an amazing gift. Yeah. And if my worth is placed in that garment, then I am on a slippery slope of disempowerment over the long run. So it's not about whether we wear makeup or whether we don't wear makeup. That's okay. Everybody's going to choose their personal preference. Yeah. However, if we choose to place makeup on because without it, I feel ugly, I beat myself up, I question my worth, I question my place in the world, then maybe the answer is actually going and spending time without wearing makeup and facing off with the stories that are leaking our personal power into who we show up in moments like this.
Flip it, right? You have to go completely the opposite direction. You know, I've heard that apps are like building in filters already. Like they're actually building in a certain percentage of a filter so that every photo has some level of it, or even cameras maybe. I feel like I've heard about it. Oh, hummingbird just hung out right there for a minute.
I'm like, cute, God, hummingbird over my left shoulder, let's go. Let her think that I'm divine.
The Lion's Gate, everything is on order. Beauty is one of those things that it's a challenge. And I feel like more and more all the time, it's difficult because of social media, of pictures, of like, remember when you're not quite as old as I am, but I don't know if you ever had cameras where you had to go get the film developed.
Yeah, I'll see that photo in 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get it, and then you wait and look in the car, and you're flipping through your photos. There was no retakes. You didn't even take 2. It was just like things happening in life. There was no Photoshop whatsoever. And now all of our photos live on our phone. They live on our computer. We are constantly faced with like striving towards perfection, which is just such a carrot that we'll never catch.
It's not about the outcome. It's about who we be while we do what we do. And the piece of perfection is actually withholding us from actually really fully expressing ourselves. And it's usually our vulnerabilities that make us beautiful. I am not magnetized towards people's filtered experiences. I actually unfollow or mute. As much as I can get through social media, I can feel the frequency of real. When somebody shares with me their challenge, I feel so much more connected to them as opposed to somebody that is presenting a version of themselves that they think the world will like, which is hollow in the words because the frequency of the words aren't embodied. And so when there's a disconnect with the embodiment, it holds like a superficial energy and then it creates a repulsion. So we think that the world wants this perfect version of ourselves because we think that only in perfection is where we get love. Actually, it's our vulnerabilities that make us beautiful. And this is the wave that's happening right now is that people are bored of not real. In a sea of illusions, in a sea of filters, in a sea of masks, people are going, I need to take a deep breath in. And the only way I can is if I'm actually experiencing authenticity. And so the new wave of leadership, not because people are trying to be leaders, but the ones that are genuinely creating a sense of leadership in an auric field is from a place, I believe, of vulnerability and being human and not having it all figured out, but curating a set of formulas that support people to have a bit of a less suffering in their experience being human. I'm excited for the wave of authenticity.
How's that going to change to go from your conventional sort of business setting, rules, deals, to something that's far more like intuitive, spiritual, true, truthful, holds that frequency? Like, how does that shift actually happen?
Can you feel the evolution of consciousness happening?
Of course.
All around us?
Man, because there's the conversations that I can have with almost anyone now about this stuff where, 5 years ago you couldn't, 10 years ago you definitely couldn't, but now you can say the word consciousness, you can say the word manifest, you can say the word quantum. Resonate. Yeah, exactly. Intuition. You can say spiritual, It's a very common question I ask, are you religious? Are you spiritual? Like, these are things, conversations you can have with so many people, and you couldn't not that long ago.
It's shifting, and it's a very real experience. Anybody that's listening or watching this, just tune in for a second and feel into, do you feel the shift in consciousness, at least even over the past 5 years? So it's happening. Inevitably, we can feel it. With that being said, I believe that the masculine and the feminine principles on this planet, the masculine, if we would talk about the masculine in the sense of the infrastructure, the penetration, the make it happen, the architecture, and then you've got the feminine, which is the receptivity and the intuitive and the creative. And I'm not saying men and women, I'm just talking about the different energies. The masculine has been out of balance for a really long time, and we're starting to go through the evolutionary shift in consciousness into the feminine principle. Well, the feminine principle is actually feeling. So the final frontier of our evolution is to start feeling our shit. So you'll see everywhere, left, right, and center. Yes, evolution of consciousness, and there's purge buckets everywhere, metaphorical and physical ones.
Totally.
People are in
because we've been in those rooms with the buckets next to you.
It's like, oh, no, here comes another thing. Here's another evolved part of me. Here's another part of myself that wanted to run away and not feel it. So in the world that is deteriorating or shifting, is from, I'm going to put my empathy aside. I'm not going to feel anything, and I'm going to build all of this for personal gain, which is the predominant business structures that are in place right now. And so what's going to happen is anything that is built from the seed of fear has within it its own demise. So you build a business because you're trying to make more money to stockpile wealth because you're afraid of not having it, it will crumble. So we're seeing the stock market, everything is shifting right now. Everything is changing because the things that are founded in fear have within it the seed of its own demise, and it's shifting into intuitive, receptive, feminine essence of our creativity and our feeling. So those that have learned how to feel well are those that will thrive during this time. And those that have decompartmentalized their emotions and not allowed themselves to feel and use blame as a way to move through this world are going to have a very challenging experience. And so this is the shift that we're going through. So do I believe that it's happening? I just have to look around me and see that it's already happening. And I don't know what the answer is, but I have learned over my time of being human that actually feeling and sitting with those emotions and diving into the eye of those emotions is what holds my personal power. And the more that I can love those aspects of myself, the more I can love others. The more I love others, the more life opens to me and the more effortless life becomes.
100%.
So you get into this current and all of a sudden life just starts like, here's this
goes
person.
so fast, right?
It's like, you know, in Finding Nemo, there's a part of that movie where there's turtles and they're in the current. And they're like, come on, get in the current. And he's like, oh, and he jumps into the current. All of a sudden he gets taken by life and life starts moving and it's so fun. And there's this current that you can tap into or not. But everything we've been told since the moment that we were born is the complete opposite. So of course we don't like ourselves. We don't think we're worthy. We think that our power lies outside of ourselves. We think that to be a successful person is an accumulation of wealth, when actually to be a successful person is how safe does someone feel in my presence? How much did I laugh today? How regulated is my nervous system? Life will respond to somebody that's anchored that internally, and it will be the gift that keeps on giving.
Isn't it trippy that you can't think it, you have to actually feel it? It's really frustrating because it's the work, right? But like if you can say something, you can say what you want, you can say what you're okay with, but unless you actually feel that to be true, and find a way to that, which usually ends up going, okay, check with yourself. What does this say about me? What am I actually insecure about? What am I, right? It's a whole like background check on why you think the way you think. Unless you feel it, it doesn't change. You can be like, no, I'm confident. Yeah, cool. And you can present in all the ways. But if you don't actually feel confident, which means you don't actually have to say anything, it doesn't work.
The universe is only responding to who you're being. Does not respond to English or French or German. It's responding to the essence of who you be. So if you haven't genuinely found forgiveness, but you say, I forgive you, then the universe can only give you the frequency you're emanating, not the words. Right. And that's a lot of my journey with my hearing loss, is that I don't pick up on the words as much as I pick up on the frequency. And the frequency is the lie detector test. It's like, you can lie all you want, but energy never lies. Never. So you can walk into a room and immediately pick up on a read within the first 30 seconds of meeting someone, is because your intuition and your gut and your extrasensory perception is picking up on a frequency, which is a byproduct of all of their choices leading up into this moment when no one's watching. So people are so worried that our cell phones are picking up everything that we're saying, but no one's paying attention to the Akashic records, responding to every single one of your action, words, and deeds.
AI can anticipate you better than you, but the universe knows it all.
Everything is recorded. And then by the law of cause and effect has to return more that you're emanating. So if I am choosing to be angry at this person, then why am I not surprised that someone just flicked me off in traffic? Because it's in my field. Right. So that is the radical responsibility that we can have when we look at the world and go, what the heck is happening? Well, come back to your personal responsibility and who are you being while no one's watching? That is going to accumulate your auric field, which will give you more of that you're emanating.
Yeah. I think we'll have iterations and levels of this in our entire life where we'll just like learn and it's like new level, new devil. You can kind of excavate and clean things up. And then as you continue to elevate, you still get presented with challenges. So the question is like, how do you deal with that new challenge? Like what gives you the signal that you're like, ah, shit, I really messed that up. You know, like that wasn't the right person. Or you go, that wasn't the right business, or that wasn't the right person to hire, or that wasn't the right person to work with, or I shouldn't have moved here. Like what are the signs and symptoms and signals? Because the truth is that we still get caught out.
For the rest of our life, we are going to go through the cycle of death, purification, rebirth, integration. Like it is the cycles of nature. It is the cycles of being human. To have self-awareness does not mean that you're exempt from experiencing the exhale as well as the inhale. So the challenging parts and the beautiful parts. Ultimately, the greatest ally that I believe that we can give ourselves is radical responsibility. The second that we blame, oh, well, they made me feel this way, or because I hired them, they ruined everything, is the second that we give all of our power away to be able to do anything about it. And then we become a disempowered state. We become into victim frequency, and then more things to be victim of will be emanated into our lives. So we must take responsibility of saying, hey, that experience really sucked. And everything in my being wants to point my finger out to them to say, well, you made me feel this way. However, the second we do that energetically is the second we give our power away on a silver platter to that person and now cannot change our circumstance and become a victim of their behavior. There is something that has to be in our psyche, consciously or unconsciously, that caters for them to be a vibrational match to us. So how can we use everything as an opportunity to know ourselves more and to stop yelling at the mirror? So this is where personal empowerment comes from. I believe that, for example, with my hearing decreasing, I could have been like, what the? And I definitely did that for a while. Like, why in my 20s am I going deaf? Or the question could be, why did I create this and what am I not listening to? It just gave me the access point to actually genuinely learn to listen beyond words. But because of that question, there is always going to be something. Every single person has an Achilles heel. Every single person has a shadow aspect. Every single person has a really deep challenge to them that is the part of them that they don't want to present to the world. How we speak about that experience will determine whether you become a victim or a creator of your reality. Usually within the seed of your greatest challenge is the superpower of your service to the world. Your greatest challenge is also your greatest gift every single time.
What do you feel like yours is?
My greatest challenge is I can't hear. My greatest gift is that I listen better than most. And I teach others to listen. So usually, for example, somebody that has had sexual abuse early on in their life, if alchemized into their service, they usually become someone like a tantrika or somebody that helps with sexual liberation because they understand the empathy at the capacity of going into the deepest part of the shadow. We can only serve at the capacity of our empathy. And our empathy is only born from how much we've actually experienced it ourselves.
I know.
So every single person's challenge holds within it the seed of their service, and everybody's service is different. So Matthias will say to me that if you look at the human body, there are trillions of cells and they all have different roles. Well, same with the people on this planet. There are billions of people on this planet and every single person is a different cell of the body. So if I was to look at you and say, I'm supposed to be doing what you're doing, I am overriding my uniqueness of the cell that I contribute to the body of humanity. So if I'm not actually curious enough to A, take ownership of my reality and B, ask the deeper questions of what I'm here to do, I tap myself out as a functioning cell. And what happens on the planet is we have a dead body. We are not functioning as one body because we don't even know our roles. And when we recognize my role is different to your role, but only I can answer that question. And then once I find my greatest challenge and turn it into my service, then all of a sudden I plug in as a part of a functioning organism of the body, of the human body. And therefore we can all be of service together for a better humanity.
How do we figure that out? Because I think one of the hardest things that I came to realize, one of the hardest things is actually knowing who you are, which includes knowing your purpose, at least for a while, right? We can all evolve and change and that calling can shift, but knowing who you are is not nearly as easy as it sounds.
Well, I think to know who you are, you've got to know who you're not.
Sure.
So going through life, and life being the data collection experience of, oh, I tried this relationship. That's definitely not it. Okay, go back to the drawing board, assessing my data collection. What did I resonate? What did I not resonate? How can I use this as an opportunity to know myself deeper? All right, go back out. All right, oh, this worked, but this didn't work. More data collection. So it starts to fine tune what it is that we're actually calling in by understanding what we're not calling in. Yeah. So can we allow life to breathe through us without being caught in a binary that there's a right and a wrong way of being human? The most sacred thing is what is. So what is presented into our field is information for us to assess and change our sail.
Totally. I say this to friends all the time, like, you know what? It's just information. Something happens, good or bad, it's like, it's just information. How someone acts or doesn't act, it's just information.
Exactly.
Right? Try and not judge it. Use it.
Use it for your own deeper understanding of what it is that you're calling into your life. So for example, try all the different flavors, try the experiences, try painting. Does that resonate with you? Do you tap into a timeless state where you actually feel high and you're so present that you're no longer attached to the outcome, but you're just lost in the process?
Totally.
Then amazing. Do more of that. If you don't like it and it doesn't feel good and it's starting to create a resistance in the body and I'm feeling like I'm so caught in time that everything in me is just trying to resist this experience, use that feeling as a litmus test of what it is that's calling more of you in. So I can't say, because it's not one size fits all, of what everybody's individual piece is, but it's about learning to listen to our feelings, our emotional, internal navigational system of our contraction or our expansion in our belly around every single moment in front of us and continuing to follow the expansion, because it's a frequency game.
Starting with you.
Gotta start with not neglecting ourselves, because then we live into a life of compromise, and a life of compromise isn't of service to anybody.
I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of know the things that they like to do, but it just doesn't seem practical. I can't make money doing that. It's not going to be approved of. It's not a good decision. It's not a wise decision. It's not a mature decision, or maybe your family will judge it. I feel like there's a lot of people that are not happy in what they do, which is going to be, I don't know, called 75% of their time. I learned the other night how, you broke away from the family to kind of live your own life and live the way you wanted to, dress the way you wanted to, partake in life the way you that brought you life, that lit you up. And I think you're a perfect person to ask what you would recommend for people to do to step into more joy and more authenticity in who they are.
What were you doing at 5 years old before the world told you who you were supposed to be? We were singing songs.
Play-Doh,
yeah.
Dancing,
naked out in the moonlight, dancing in the rain.
Which is what we'll be doing tonight on the Lion's Gate. No.
Exactly. But going back to it being a frequency, we are a radio tower emitting a frequency. If I am working in a job because I have a family that I have to pay for and make sure that there's a roof over their head and food on their table, that is a very real responsibility. And it's very important to not get lost in the Delulu land of being like, all right, well, sack all of that and I'm just going to go dance in the rain with my titties out. Like, great, a little ungrounded. Let's bring it back. Okay. However, what would it look like to gift yourself 30 minutes every day to honor the 5-year-old self inside of you that got lost along the way? And just checking back in and saying, I loved spending time in nature. I loved catching tadpoles in the river and then releasing them again. Write down a list of things that you were doing when you were a kid before you had to grow up. Personally, I was making songs with my girlfriends. And we did like a girls band, and we would do dances, and I would play the keyboard in my bedroom, and I would make random dishes for my dad out of some of the stuff in the pantry. Like, I love to cook. These are just, as a really young child. And how can I implement 30 minutes every day to doing that? It doesn't have to be put all my eggs in one basket, because I have responsibilities. However, can we start to feed the frequency of our joy again? Just for 30 minutes. And I understand also when we have children, that 30 minutes can get really, really tiny. However, there is always a pocket somewhere, even if it's 5 minutes, just to feed and start to reactivate that frequency to come alive again in us, because joy is one of the greatest rebellions of our time. There is a quote, and I don't remember exactly who it was that said it, so apologies for that. However, the quote is, "The creative adult is the child that survived." To play and to be in joy is a child that survived an adult in the world of over-seriousness. And over-seriousness, according to the Gene Keys, is one of the greatest diseases that we can experience in our body. It taps directly into our vitality source.
I like this saying too with relationships. It's like, you don't want to find someone to grow old with. You want to find someone to be young with.
Exactly. Exactly. To play and be silly and be like, yo, being human is crazy.
Yeah,
what the heck? What the heck is going on here? Yo, like, I don't remember signing up for this. Do you remember signing on the deadline and being like, oh yeah, I'm going to go down to that planet and have no fucking clue what's going on. And I'm just going to make it up as I go along. Not only that, am I going to be around billions of people that are pretending like they know what's going on as well. But let's be honest, we're all floating on a massive rock hailing through space really fast, held into orbit by a giant ball of fire. What the heck is happening here?
I mean, let's just face it. You know, we worry so much about how, like, our life and what we do. And it's like, we don't even know how the pyramids were built, and they're still there.
They're still there.
Like, we still don't even know that.
During
like,
that big ass
1,000 years. I mean, this planet's 4.2 or 3 billion years old. Like, who freaking cares?
We don't know. And actually, that's what makes this mystery and this dance so exciting, because we don't know. And the second that I know is the glass is
part
full.
of the joy of it.
Yeah, it's part
Come
of the joy
down to earth with
it.
amnesia. It'll be fun and really hard because of that polarity.
Yeah. And for anything to exist, it has to have its polarity so that the energy particles can bounce off of each other and create form. So thank you for, I don't know, actually. And I think that that's a huge part of the journey, is to get to the place of going, I actually don't know. And that's what allows me to dance with the mystery. I don't know where this relationship's going. I don't know where this piece of art is going. I don't know where my life is going. So it's not about, I need to find my purpose and I get to this destination and now, hoo-ha, I've made it. It's actually recognizing that our purpose is ever unfolding in the present moment, and it's always subject to change, because the only constant thing in life is change.
The best stuff happens when you don't plan it.
Oh, I don't know. It just comes through.
I'm a planner.
It just comes through. This is where it's like, oh my goodness, I'm living to blow my own mind, and I have become an empty vessel for life to breathe through me, as opposed to me projecting what life is meant to be onto my external reality, which is the control, which shuts down our vitality and takes us out of the feminine receptivity and into the masculine must be this way.
How is the feminine doing? We talked about the masculine. We talked about men stepping into their feelings more. But I'm like one virtue that's very important that I try and have for myself and expect out of others is like a fairness. Even in the worst situations, it's like, all right, that's fair. Yep. You know, like that's your money, or as your furniture, or whatever it is. But how are women doing? How is the feminine doing? Is because we're using it as a masculine feminine expression. So like, what is our job? What are we here to do? What is in this point in time, what are we here to alchemize and evolve into? Because it takes two.
First and foremost, when I speak about masculine and feminine, I'm not speaking about just men and women being separate categories, because there'll be people that have incarnated into a man's body that experience more feminine energy, and there'll be vice versa. There'll be women in a physically women's body that will experience more masculine energy. And then, of course, there's the people that identify with whatever the energy is most prominent within themselves. What I believe, if you are a womb bearer, if you are born a woman with a womb, I mean, you have the Stargate Enterprise between your legs.
Literally, we're a portal.
From one dimension to the next. Like, can we just acknowledge, even though it seems to be like the way, because every single person came in, entered into this world through this way. How weird is it? It's like some Alien versus Predator shit. That, like, we grow humans inside of our body. Where did you even come from? We just hailed in. Right. Boom. Now all of a sudden I have a human growing inside of me and I push them out, or they're
you were a tadpole.
Exactly. And then before that, you were a thought.
You were breathing liquid and then air all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's
that one kind of blows me away, by the way. That one blows me away, by the way.
It never gets old. It's just like every single person was born out of another person. So as a woman, as having a womb, a woman, we have this capacity of birthing from the non-physical to the physical realm. This is remarkable. Every single person on this planet came from a woman. It's a crazy fact, actually. It's like what a profound experience to just recognize, just by being in this body and having a womb, I have the capacity to pull a soul from a non-physical dimension into a physical dimension and breathe life into them. How on earth can we get to that place where we say, if I'm not wearing mascara, I'm unworthy? Oh, what is this? It's a Stargate Enterprise. Like, that in itself is just a recognition of our responsibility on this planet. And whether we are birthing children, physical children, or projects, we can birth life. And this isn't just subject to women, but I'm specifically referring to having a womb. The womb is not a place to store fear and pain. It's a place to bring life, creation, and also as an opportunity to access the oracle, the ability to communicate far beyond our own logical mind and open ourselves up as a hollow bone to allow life to breathe through us and to blow our own mind by what is actually coming through. So none of these conversations are planned. There's no script. This is really just allowing ourselves to get out of our own way as the creatrix to birth through something that was a non-physical thing into a physical thing, or into a non-physical thing into a vibrational word. And our words are for creating worlds. So what are we speaking about?
But what could we be doing better? Do you think there's something that the feminine is supposed to be doing better? If we're asking the masculine to be have more feelings, is there something that the feminine needs to do too? Or is it more of like or not? Like it could be where there was a point in history where women had a lot of power and respect, and then it sort of went more into a masculine world of logic and it's like practical decision making, data, numbers, analytical, way up in the head. And yeah, there's definitely a part of bringing it back into the feeling. But I wonder, in my fairness, my mission for fairness, I wonder what the feminine could be doing as well.
Well, I definitely don't want to create a generalized blanket statement to everybody. It should be doing more of X, Y, and Z. However, what I would love to experience is understanding the difference between fear and our intuition, and allowing our intuition to just have a little bit more breathing room. And that, again, is not subject to what you identify with. It's subject to recognizing that there are the yin and yang, the masculine and feminine within all of us. And there are certain qualities and traits that are energetically aligned with the masculine and energetically aligned with the feminine. And feminine frequency, what is energetically aligned with it is our intuition. So what would it look like for us to actually listen to our intuition? And usually I find that the very first initial thought is our intuition, and the second one is fear. Is the mind comes in and goes, yeah, but I don't know, and questions ourselves. So then all of a sudden, if we can just extend that gap just a little bit through our awareness of the voice between the first initial thought and then the second thought, and to actually give credit to the first thought, every time we listen to our intuition, it grows stronger. Every time we actually take action on intuition, it grows stronger. Yeah. And somebody that is guided by their intuition is somebody that is guided by their internal navigation system. And that is what I believe is powerful. That is where power for me comes from. Is somebody that's guided from their energy right behind their belly button. As opposed to, well, what do you think of that? Oh, okay. and now I'm swayed and molded by your opinion. Or what do you think of that? Okay, now I'm swayed and molded by your opinion, and I'm going to put those two opinions together, and then I'm going to make a decision and a choice. It's still coming from outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that is such an incredible North Star once it's really at least just given airtime or credit or just a little bit of listen to. Then all of a sudden we have a North Star that will discern.
It's like a rapport you get too, right? Like there's like a trust that you end up getting with it.
Mm-hmm. It becomes the breeding ground of no longer neglecting ourselves. Like really genuinely having our own back and saying, hey, I'm not going to neglect that voice anymore. Like this person isn't right for me. Like, or this experience is actually not nourishing me, and it's been over a consistent period of time. I got to listen to that voice, but deep down, we know. And if you don't know, just stop speaking for a second. Just go quiet. Because in the Gene Keys, it talks about pure originality is born from silence. Otherwise, we're just recycling things that we've heard. So if we're having a disconnect from our clarity, go be quiet for a week and go be in nature, and all of the answers will present themselves to you. But we're so noisy, cell phones, distraction, driving in our car, this podcast, this person, FaceTiming my friend over here. From the second I wake up, I'm looking on my phone. Noise, 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 noise. And we're wondering why we're so disconnected from our intuition. That's just too much noise. We have that, right? You have that self-awareness of being like, this is actually not serving me. And it's okay for us to have our human, like to not to be perfect and not to be doing the 6 minutes and the ice plunge every day. And like, it's okay. Like we can forgive ourselves. And in the core of my being, I know that which enriches me, and I know that depletes me. And I'm going to actively make the choice to create a life of enrichment, because it's a declaration of self-love, which is where every single thing in my life is born from.
And there's a big difference between thinking it and doing it. Like there's a big difference too between, oh, that's not, like, this isn't the right relationship, but then doing something about it. Or there's a big difference between I shouldn't have my phone next to the bed, but actually making a practice of plugging it in the kitchen. Like there's a big gap there, but I do feel like it takes a long time to get to the realization. Mm-hmm. And then the hardest part though is the actual changing.
Mm-hmm. The first step is always the hardest on a journey, but every intentional act is a magical act. So if you can just start, every single step gets easier and easier and easier. Eventually, it's just like, it's just the default. Mm-hmm. You know, you get in the car, you put the seatbelt on. Why? Because you've been doing it since a kid. Are you even thinking about it anymore? No, it's just what you do. Yeah. But at the beginning, if you haven't been wearing a seatbelt your whole life, and then you're like, what is it? Okay, I got it. Remember, seatbelt. Okay, got it. So it just takes consistency. But the first piece is self-awareness of that enriches. And so, okay, right now for me personally, I'm 3 months of no sugar. I'm doing this commitment, and within the first week and a half, I was getting the cravings. It was getting to 4 p.m. and what I like to call my gremlins were like, it's time to raid the cabinets and get everything you can and just shove it down your throat. And that for me was because I did a litmus test of what can I not say no to? And that's usually sugar. So that was where my power was being leaked. So that was where I just chose to stop eating sugar, and the first week and a half was difficult. But now I'm 3 months in, I didn't even think about it. I think that we can shift and change our experience, and also simultaneously the only way that we're going to create long-lasting change is not from a place of shame. Okay?
There are lots of modalities and different things, and I know that, I want to start with Gene Keys, because I've never done any of that. Remember you were going to give me a reading?
Really?
I don't think we did it.
We didn't do it.
Yeah, because I know you don't do that for people, but I was like, I don't know like much of anything about Gene Keys, but I've done, other things, and I'm always interested in, because I kind of think we're just zeros and ones anyway. We might just be a simulation. Mm-hmm. If so, we can hack ourselves with archetypes, patterns, right? We fit into these buckets. It's like, there's like the Briggs-Meyer or Myers-Briggs or something like that. There's astrology, there's Gene Keys,
human design.
Like there's so many ways you
Enneagram.
can kind of bucket yourself into like these, like, I'm a number.
Yeah. I'm a 3!
I'm an 8. An 8 and a 3, I think. An 8 first, then a 3. I'm curious about Gene Keys. Mm-hmm. You went into it for like 6 years, right? Yeah. And like totally immerse yourself. Richard Rudd is who created it, right?
Rudd is the founder.
And his story is really interesting too, of just how it sort of came through him and the downloads. And so I really believe in that. I mean, I really believe in the sort of like cosmic download that happens with people to be the conduit for information. As well as people like Bashar or Abraham Hicks or people like that too, channeling. So I love that and I trust that and I'm very curious about it.
First and foremost, big up to Richard Rudd and the body of work that he created. I have so much respect for him, and so much appreciation for this technology. It's a living transmission. So the meaning of a living transmission is that it's a body of work, but every single time you read it, you're in a different level of consciousness, so you'll retain new information. That's why you can never get to the bottom of it, which is amazing.
Because when you change, the things you see change.
It's just constantly evolving. So your lens shifts. You never step in the same river twice, right? So you read the same thing 3 months later, but you're in a different place in your awareness, and then new highlighted words will start to be integrated. So that's why I love it, because I can't master it, which
totally. It's like listening to rap songs as an adult now, and you're like, that's the words that they say?
Yeah, I can't believe I was saying
that.
No wonder
why my parents hated that.
And the Gene Keys came to me at a time when I really needed them, or needed it. So it's a body of work that spent 7+ years for Richard to actually write the book. And it's founded on the I Ching and astrology. And it's also the sister or brother of human design. And it is the 64 archetypes of the human experience. So there are many, it's like if you look at the essence of the soul of you, you have a diamond. There's many different faces for the same diamond. It's the same diamond, but there's so many different aspects. There's so many different dimensions of your expression. And within each archetype of the energy that can breathe through us, there's 3 different frequencies. It's all on a frequency bandwidth. The shadow, life is happening to me. The gift, life is happening for me. The siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word for enlightenment, life is happening through me. Within every archetype that is predominant within our astrology or the makeup of the moment that we are born, you can decipher or understand where do you sit on the vibrational spectrum within the shadow, gift, and siddhi, and how through self-awareness of the shadow, you can shift it into a higher octave and tune to a higher frequency. And we are like instruments that the responsibility of the instrument or our instrument is to fine tune it, but the music that comes through depends on the tuning. So every single one of our decisions will decipher a frequency that will tune our frequency or tune our instrument so that what comes through has to be a byproduct of that tuning. The Gene Keys is a roadmap into, and if you put your birth information in, it will give you what's called a hologenetic profile, which is a roadmap of the archetypes that are predominant to you. And then once you understand the shadow, you understand how to embrace it when it shows up so that you become self-aware and can fine tune your instrument to a higher octave, and therefore be a higher octave human. First, when the Gene Keys was given to me, the book, it's big. It's like thick.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
dense.
why I was like, I know this is going to be difficult to summarize, but because it's a lot of information.
So much information. It took me a really long time to get through the whole thing, but I transcribed the entire book in my own notes and I have it on my laptop. And so whenever I want to tap back into that Gene Key, I can just read my notes and then that information comes back in. But it came to me at a time where I wasn't ready for the information. I opened the book and I was just like, I'm sorry, what are you saying? Coding this thing, the chemicals that I just couldn't retain the information. I just wasn't ready for it yet. And a few years later was when it came back into my life. And that was when I was experiencing my deafness. And I realized that I have deafness in my Gene Keys and the shadow of deafness.
And then you were hooked. And then you were hooked.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it takes a little bit of proof here and there just to kind of go,
oh,
maybe I'll pay attention.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you see the word deafness and you're experiencing deafness in your life, you're like, okay, hold on, let me give this book a second chance. And I started reading it, and the shadow of deafness is not listening to your own intuition and listening to the status quo over your intuition. The gift is insight, the ability to perceive beyond the illusionary mask of the noise, and it actually becomes a truth filter. And deafness is actually curated so that you can preserve your internal innocence, so that you're no longer swayed by the status quo of the collective mind.
Kind of sounds great now.
I was like, I'm sorry. This whole time I've told myself that I have this horrible thing happening to me.
You're like, but I'm boosted here.
I'm like, actually, I'm like crushing. Like actually, the stories I started telling myself, stories of a creation, were that I actually have a superpower. What? First time since I was diagnosed that I actually started saying a positive story about it. Well, that shifts everything that you're going to perceive as what's happening. So that specific gene key changed the entire trajectory of my life. And so that was the hook for me into the gene key. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is insane. I have a roadmap into a higher state of consciousness based off of my unique time that I entered onto this planet.
So is it the same as astrology with like the time of birth, location of birth, basically? And
date, time, location. And it will give you like a specific coordinate. They have a mega calculator that calculates a specific coordinate that will then give you a hologenetic profile. And after, this is a whole different topic, but after studying more about the tree of life from the Kabbalah text and understanding how astrology and the I Ching and the gene keys, it all overlaps through the tree of life. It's such an incredible technology to understand the blueprint of who we're here to be. Now, it's not here to put us in a box. It's here to give the river water, a river bed, so that the potential is not seeped back into the soil. Because one of the greatest human fears is the fear of wasting our potential in this lifetime. So it just helps us to understand. I could have spent my entire life not appreciating the gift that I've been given because all I can see is the shadow. But with the gift of insight, the ability to see beyond what is actually happening from a 360 perspective, not just a 180 perspective, the stories I start telling myself are different from an empowered place, not a disempowered place. And all 75 trillion cells in my body, their two jobs, to listen and respond, start responding to me saying I have a superpower. Now all of a sudden here I am sitting in a podcast interview with Danica because you're interested in what I've got to say. Well, that definitely didn't come from being a victim. So it's a fun technology. I love it so much. I respect it so much. And I have shouted it from the rooftops for anybody that is curious to just have a roadmap.
Still give me a reading?
I would definitely look into what's going on, girl. What's your archetypes and see what's going on.
I don't want to let you off the hook if you're willing to do it. I think a lot of people are afraid to be seen, but I want you to tell me what the hell you see, even if it's not good. I really want to know it all. I mean, if you want to tell me I'm great in some way too, I mean, I'm not gonna like turn that down and be like, you don't have to start with that, but I want to know who I am and how to be better and how to, like, there's, I feel like my dad was like, why do you look into all this stuff that there's no answers? And I was like, well, because number one, if you don't ask questions, you'll never figure it out. But number two, also, if I can figure out like how this all works, or I think I know how this all works, then I know how to play the game. Like, I know how to hack this game. And it's all about how we find more joy and happiness, right? And like, one of the things, as you're mentioning, sitting here with me, is trusting your intuition, which is something that you talked about, chasing your joy, which takes you around the world to different places with fun people and interesting people. And you had sat down with Robert Edward Grant, and you had a vision that we would be friends. And so then you asked Robert to reach out, from my understanding. And he was like, hey, Blue wants to get in touch with you. I was like, okay. And I was like, great. She seems cool. Anyway, so then we connected, and I was like, you are such a lovely human being and so special and so sweet, which then took us to the first time that we finally met in person, to Egypt, which is like the ultimate homeland of mystery. When you got Matthias there, who's the ultimate like mystery man that calls it in and finds it and sees it and feels it. And then you have all these really cool human beings. Like, you made that happen too, on some level, for sure.
I like to think that the relationship sort of starts with it means to go on. Like, our first connection in person was in Egypt with the most magical humans. And it was like pushing that first domino with that frequency of like, all right, this is how you guys are going to enter into your friendship. Like,
sure.
Let's go to Egypt. Why
looking
not?
At the pyramids.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the hotel was like looking at the pyramids.
Exactly. In the king's chamber, like, hey, Danica, what's up? Cool. This is kind of the theme of our friendship, I guess.
Remember when we did this before?
Yeah, exactly.
Thousands of years ago?
And so, it's been a really magical experience, but also I think that the first, actually, if we were to really go back, the first domino that sparked this connection was a vision. And so that in itself comes and hails in from another dimension.
Totally.
Like,
thanks for like pointing that out more specifically. Totally.
I had the vision that you and I would be sitting around a dinner table and like having a chat, and like we had gone out for either lunch or dinner. I don't know specifically what time of day it was. And fast forward to a couple nights ago, we were sitting around a dinner table doing exactly that. And so the vision was more of a premonition. For me, it's about, well, do I trust my intuition and put myself in a vulnerable position? Do I actually go and say, okay, I don't know if this woman is going to be like, I don't want to speak to her, or I'm not interested, or like, why on earth is she reaching out to me? Or could be like, oh, fuck it. Like, whatever, what's the worst that can happen? And so, I just had to trust that. It was like, okay, I saw this thing. It felt very strong. It was a very prominent part of my night. And I know that Robert is connected with you. So I'm just going to put myself out on a limb here and ask if there was a way that we could be connected. And I also trust that if it was a no in that moment, then I honor that. And it just wasn't the right time. But what it did is it led to us going out to Egypt and having these profound activations and us bonding over mutual friends and connections and experiencing our own personal memories, and then to lead to dinner, and then also now leading to this podcast, and then whoever is that's touched by this podcast. And
you've invited me to live with you in California now. So like I'll be a part-time sister. You said I could bring my dogs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, the whole thing, the family.
But only a little bit, right? Like just sometimes, right? We don't want to overstay my welcome.
Just sometimes.
But I'll move in for 6 months.
But see, it continues to evolve and take roots, and it came from an intuitive hit. And so I think that there is a magical dimension going on, and if we can really listen to those things, it births entire worlds that are so far beyond what we can ever have imagined. But just trusting our intuition on that.
How was the trip in Egypt for you?
I'm just like you. Like, I just want to get to the truth behind the truth behind the truth behind the truth. I don't want to just sit in shallow waters and think that this is what all life is having to offer. And so Egypt is one of those places that is going to get you to the truth behind the truth behind the truth, and then leave you in the mystery after that. Egypt has, since I was 7 years old, I went to Egypt, and it changed me. And I came back to school and I did a school project. I was obsessed with Egypt.
I'm obsessed with Egypt.
So
I'll
incredible.
Watch any movie that has a pyramid in it. I don't care how stupid it is.
Yeah.
Cheesy
all the mummies,
all the mummy movies, of course. I'm like, oh my gosh, look, it's, I'm like always imagining who they're depicting in the movie.
Exactly. It's just, it is pure magic. There is something about that land. There is something about those pyramids, and you can just feel it. And my time in Egypt, I think, the first time going back since I was 9. So it was my first time revisiting it with such a meticulously curated group of really remarkable heart-led leaders, and individuals. Yes, it was for specifically, people that have an online presence, purely because we were talking about the Orion app. However, the real discernment was, are you a heart-led individual? It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It doesn't matter what you've achieved. If you're not leading with your heart, then it's not it. Yeah. And so that was the curation of the group, is that every single person that have a podcast or does have an online platform, they're creating it from the heart frequency. And that's what allowed the group to be this incredible incubation of everywhere you look, it was just nourishment.
I mean, I was worried going in. I was like, there's a lot of big personalities going on this trip. And I was like, how's this going to go? Like, everything rolled so smoothly.
I did an acacia tree ceremony on the Nile just before we met as the group.
The thing that Moses tripped on when he was wasn't it an acacia tree? The burning bush was
the acacia tree. That ceremony, I pretty much died, in the sense where I got hit with a wave of fatigue, and I was like, really couldn't get myself off the floor. But there were so many mosquitoes that I wrapped a white scarf around my head and my body, and I literally was laying, and I got fully mummified. I didn't move the entire ceremony. Everyone was going through it and they're experiencing all these different things. I was like this, mummified the entire ceremony. I woke up the next morning, mauled by mosquitoes. I was just covered in mosquito bites. And I went through a full death rebirth of my identity in Egypt. And long story short, Matthias, if you know anything about Matthias de Stefano, so woo-woo, and also simultaneously like tapping into some next level stuff. Like, it's really out there, and really he's been one of the main people that, of course, corrected me coming back into my authenticity over and over and over again, because he can see what I can't see, that are sitting in blind spots. And I was born, my name was Charlotte Victoria, and I love that name. I really love it. And for a huge, for the past, I don't know how many years, I've gone under the name of Blue, and it's a representation of beauty, love, and unity. And that's my mission to restore on the planet. And
how did it become Blue of Earth though?
Because I was just trying to find an Instagram handle that worked. I didn't know that everyone was going to call me Blue of Earth. I just was like, Blue of Earth. That was.
As we became friends, it was like, yeah, hang on, Blue of Earth. You know that one. Like, I don't know how to describe, like, blue doesn't always go all the way. I'm like, of Earth.
Well, I didn't know that we would get to this point in humanity that we were just referring to each other as their Instagram handle. So I'm introduced
totally
as Blue
true.
of Earth, and like, there was articles written of being like, Blue, and we guess her middle name is Of and her last name is Earth. And I'm like, right. What the heck? I'm like, no, it's my Instagram handle. It's because Blue was taken. Like, I had no other option. So I was just like, oh, Of Earth works. I'm here, Of Earth. That was really that simple. And, well, now I'm Blue of Earth, and everybody introduces me as Blue of Earth. And I'm like, yeah, well, roll with the waves, I guess. But in that, in the time of Egypt was the reclamation of Charlotte, and what I had neglected when I changed my name. I hadn't legally changed my name, but realizing that energetically our names hold a certain frequency and container. And when I just completely pivoted to Blue, there was a neglect of the essence of Charlotte. And so I got to die from the old version of like back into the integrated version of Blue and Charlotte, allowing them all to exist in the same space. And so a lot of my power came back online when I allowed that part of me to be reintegrated into my life, and to allow it to be safe for me to also be her as well. I'm all of it. And Blue is, like I said, the holds the certain charge of the mission that I have on this planet. And I have my podcast, which is on pause right now, but my listeners, I call them the Bluebirds, not my birds, not my people. However, individuals that have taken it into their own accord to spread beauty, love, and unity through their life's work. And so that's the essence of Blue. However, I am Charlotte Victoria, and it always will be, and that's my legal name. And now allowing the integrated sense of wholeness back into my life happened after Egypt.
Go a little bit further into why you decided to re-identify as Blue.
It's going to sound pretty woo-woo, but I had no intention of changing my name at all. I was in a yoga class, and I just heard this really clear message that your name is Blue. And I was like, what the heck? Blue? I don't even like the color blue that much. Like, I never own anything blue. And it was definitely very like, kind of what I call like a pattern interrupt moment. And I listened to it, and I kind of just, it's like, all right, well, I'll play around with it, I guess. Like maybe like a nickname or something. And I told one of my friends, and she loved it. So she started calling me Blue, and it just caught on, and people just started calling me Blue, and it just took off like almost unbeknown, like out of my will. It was just like started to spread. And so when it came to building my podcast, I was like, well, what would my podcast name be? And I put it out to my audience, what do you think would be a good podcast name? Mm-hmm. And someone wrote Deja Blue. And I was like, it's like remembering who you are. Mm-hmm. And I was like, the path of beauty, love, and unity. And I was like, this is great. I'll rock it. So I went with Deja Blue. And then I would introduce myself on the podcast. Hey, everybody, I'm your host, Blue. And it just became an easy thing, because like the name Charlotte also, if you have an accent or it's difficult to spell. And so to have an outward facing online presence and to just have a very memorable, unique name, it just catches on easier. And so to have the Deja Blue podcast hosted by Blue, it's very unique and niche and understandable and digestible. So, and it also carries a message for the mission. So I just loved it and I rocked it. However, I didn't realize that in the motion of that there is a part of me that was lost and neglected a little bit. I didn't even intentionally do that. It wasn't my intention. And it wasn't until I was in Egypt with Matthias was when he casually became my subconscious mind and reflected back to me that I had neglected a part of myself when I changed my name. And when he said that, I got really emotional. And so I was realizing he was tapping into some truth there. It's been a journey since then of what did Charlotte do? Again, what was I doing when I was 5 years old before the world told me who I was supposed to be? And how can I give more credit to that? So I put the podcast on pause and I went back to being a full-time artist. And I'm now a year into a project of making a tarot deck. And
yeah, I want to talk about that next. want to ask, because I think we're living in this very interesting time where people figuring out who they are, who they want to be is so on the table. And whether it's people that are changing their names or whether it's someone that's changing the way they identify as a gender through the way they're referred to or their body itself. I mean, you know, we're in a really interesting time right now. So can you give advice to those who are questioning who they are and how they identify in all the different ways, and how to rectify that to come back to a place of peace and wholeness in yourself and belief, like confidence of who you are, and really honestly who you were at 5?
I think we need to look at the systems that are in place as to why we've got so confused in the first place. From the moment that we're born, we are given a name by somebody else. Okay, great, beautiful. Like that's our name that was given by our parents. And then we are usually given a religion. And then we're given a social class or background. We're given a continent in which we live in or a country, so a passport. There are many, many different identities that are placed on us from the second that we're born. And so then we go into, for the most part, not everybody, but for the most part, the modern education. And modern education is the birthing place of sapping your uniqueness out of you. You get given 2 people or 4 people that are uniquely very different, whether a scientist by nature or an artist by nature or a philosopher by nature. And then you put them on the same grading scale. And then you say, well, you got an A, so you're a good kid, but you got a D. So you need extra time because you need help and you're not a good kid. So then mom and dad get really upset because you got low grades. And so because you got low grades, then the child will start to tell themselves that they're not worthy or that they're not acceptable or that they are not a good person or evolved person. So what happens is our uniqueness is not our superpower, but actually the very thing that ostracizes us. And if we get ostracized from the group, it questions our very survival. So when we are questioning our survival, we will sacrifice our uniqueness. We will sacrifice our unique blueprint to be accepted so that we can survive. And then to be accepted is stripping us away from the very thing that we came here to do. And so when you no longer have a schooling system or the parents to tell you that you're a bad kid, who becomes the perpetrator? You do. So when you graduate school, you have this voice in your head that says, I'm dumb, or I'm stupid, or I'm not a good student, or I'm not accepted, or I'm not cool. And so what happens is that stories of a creation, stories of a creating world, you create a world based around unworthiness. And so then we go out into life and we are trying to create our worth from something outside of ourselves. And so usually it's in success through finances or achievement. But what's happening is we're painting over a hollow shell almost and presenting this vision of ourselves. And then all of a sudden we're wondering, who the fuck am I? I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't even know what it excites me. I don't even know what it is that it brings me joy. Well, let's just give credit or an understanding that I don't blame you. There's nothing wrong with you if you don't know who you are. Look at the system you went through. Look at the ice cube tray you were put in to then define this unique facet. No one has ever been like you and no one will ever be like you. There is a unique fingerprint and a unique soul that nobody else on the planet has just by you being alive. And I am sorry. I am sorry that society and the construct of what we have on planet Earth has not honored your uniqueness to get to a point now where you're in mid-40s and you're questioning who you are. And if you are questioning who you are starting your journey of the inner revolution that has to happen before we're going to see the external revolution happen. So thank you for your curiosity and thank you for saying, I don't know. But at least we can say, I don't know, as opposed to saying a false I do know, which is based off somebody else's map of consciousness. So if we can just get to the point of saying, this isn't working for me, and I don't even really know who I am, but at least I can say that every single intentional act is a magical act, and today I'm going to honor my 5-year-old self by getting my watercolors out and spending 15 minutes in nature drawing a scene because that's what I used to do as a kid. That's a revolutionary act. So you don't need to know the full journey ahead. You don't need to know where your life is taking you, but the curiosity to actually start asking the deeper questions and to rewrite the story that by being born, you are inherently worthy. That is the revolutionary act.
Speaking of watercolors, the deck.
Here's one I have it.
The deck. Let's do it. Let's play. I love painting. I love watercolors. I love all the arts and crafts stuff. But you're making a deck, which I'm really excited about because you're an incredible artist. As I saw in Egypt, I really had a much deeper understanding for your hearing loss and the way that that plays into your life and the challenges it presents, because when we'd be in group settings and there'd be someone speaking at the front, but you couldn't see them and you couldn't see their mouth and it was distant in a group of, 60 people or something like that, you would draw. I was like, holy shit, that's really good. Which I told you, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Tell everyone what you're creating.
Well, thank you, first and foremost, and for acknowledging what it is that I was doing, because when I can't hear in the space, nothing's grabbing my attention. If nothing's grabbing my attention, I become the naughty kid. So I'm the one that's poking everyone else. I'm trying to get some kind of stimulus in the space. We're in there for 2 hours. It's a lecture. Everyone's glued to what's being said. And I'm over here like, alrighty, nothing to grab onto. So for me, just making art brings my attention and brings me back into the space.
And add a little flavor in about creativity, because I think that's such a fundamental for us and the role that it should play, if it should play in everyone's life. Mm-hmm. See, I feel like it's a fundamental, it's actually one of our primordial expressions is just creating. Mm-hmm. It puts us into a different state. Mm-hmm. So any kind of creating that is. So art is definitely a classic one. Yeah. So I'm just curious your thoughts about everyone finding a way to create, and if you think that's important. And then, of course, the deck itself and the plan for it, and all the beautiful art you're creating. And what is the deck?
For me, creation is not about attachment to the outcome, but getting lost in the process. That is emanating out of us. And so if I can just enjoy what I'm doing, whether it's I know that you're an incredible chef, if it's making food from scratch and finding the different ingredients, that's a timeless state for you, I would presume. Sure, yeah. So yes, then you have this beautiful piece of food that you will eat afterwards. But for you, it's like an artist's palette. It's it's creation. And so it comes in many forms. You have to be good with a paintbrush, but it's sometimes interior designing and decorating a home and creating the feng shui. That's a creative process. But I'm putting emphasis on the timelessness of the experience as opposed to needing to rush through the process to get to the outcome. Because we're overriding that, like I said before, the universe doesn't give you what you want. The universe gives you who you are. It's an original quote by I do not know. And I, again, apologize, but I'm not taking credit for it. The universe doesn't give you what you want. The universe gives you who you are. And if who you are is enjoying this timeless state, then the universe will give you more of that thing to be excited about in that way. So I think that the creative process is essential for our thriving, and it's going to be different for everybody. And there's not one size that fits all. And for me personally with the tarot deck, I never thought that I would make a deck of any kind. I didn't think that I had it in me to be able to stay focused on a project for 2 years straight. And I'm blowing my own mind of what's being created over a consistent period of time. Also, there's an instant gratification monkey in me. If you know anything about astrology, I have a Leo moon. So I'm always like, la la la, love
looky
this.
here.
Look, I created
That's
this.
pretty.
I did this thing. Look at it.
That's great.
So for me to create art for a year straight and for no one to see it, it's really a thing, but it's going to be the gift that will keep on giving after it does get released. There in our studio, I'm working on this project with Lily Ashwell, who's a notorious artist and illustrator and writer for the Heavenly Bodies astrology deck. So we're doing an extension of that, which is Heavenly Bodies Tarot. And in our studio in Topanga, there is a big wall and it is covered in original pieces, and people walk into that studio and they're like, oh, the energy in here. And Gabby who's over on the side of the podcast, she walked in and she started crying and said, I had to just take a moment and just felt the energy, because every single brushstroke, each piece is about 10,000 brushstrokes.
Are you painting each one of them on your own, or is Lily
and I are both artists, so we're layering our work together. Do you give each other, do you each have half of them and then you're doing them, or are you each doing both? Or are you each putting your strokes into each painting? Both of us touch every single piece.
Okay, cool.
Some more than others.
Yeah.
Lily thrives predominantly she thrives in all areas of art. specifically like scenic. I thrive best in like faces and animals. And then in between that, there's sort of like things that both of us find our middle ground in. The tarot is every single day there's a different card that we're working on, and that card is the energy that we're actually moving through. So
there's all the energies in the deck.
You know this because we went for dinner the other night and I said it.
I know, it made so much sense when I was like, you're like, wow, it's a big undertaking. Because another question is like, why is it taking 2 years? But then when you were talking about just the weight of it and like, you know, what was some of like the tower card, like you're going into the tower card energy, which is like you said, people jumping out of a tower, like just flailing themselves out of it to jump to
the whole
death,
thing,
basically,
exactly.
Right? It's like a tragic, things are totally going to change card. So you go into all those energies like, look, there's the priestess, but there's the tower, or there's the 5 of cups you said is really hard. So to go into 78 of them, is that correct? Mm-hmm. That's a lot. People just need to understand how consuming being in a full energy and all those energies takes, because it's exhausting at times. Sometimes it's probably energizing, but other times it's really quick to get zapped. So you don't get as much done on those days that you get zapped from going into those full energies, I would imagine.
And also with the rise of AI is people aren't making art from scratch anymore. Right. So it's just so easy to just like, oh, I'll make a deck and I'll just put in 4 keywords and then I'll whip up a piece of art and all of a sudden then I'll put a description on it, and there's no art that's ever been made like that because they haven't used the keywords in that specific algorithm. So that's actually sapping creativity. So what would it look like to actually sit in front of a blank piece of paper and say, what does this energy mean to me? Well, I can only create as much of my capacity of my empathy for the energy. So how am I going to create that art? I've got to live that energy. So every single card, we have to be initiated into that energy to then create from that place and for it to be genuine.
God, if you believe in quantum energy, this deck is loaded. Meaning like to go from like an AI computer, like just print something out. The 5 of cups could look the same way, a million different, in a million different decks. But to create your own original art, to be putting your own personal stamp on it, to channel in, to stay clean and clear through that energy, as well as the meaning of it. I fully believe in that quantum energy. It's the thinking of someone and then they text or they call, I mean, yesterday I was on my way to a friend's house and I was stopping by Whole Foods to grab a couple snacks and a bottle of wine, and this guy was like, oh, hi. And then he's like, oh, do you know this person? And I was like, yeah. And then I went up to my friend's house and she was there. I had no idea. And it's like, man, like I believe in the sort of like alignment, what happens when, with the quantum field. So it's going to be a powerful deck.
It is action packed with so much lived experience, so much magic. And it's not a belief, it's a knowing the potency of this deck, because I'm living and breathing it behind the scenes, and we haven't even got to the writing of the book yet. So we take a pivot in November, sorry. We're going out to Peru to go and sit in an isolation diet in the jungle to get really quiet, where pure originality is born, is in silence. So isolation diet meaning that we don't even make eye contact with anyone for 8 days straight. I'm doing a full water fast for 8 days, and I'm just sitting in the Amazon jungle and getting really quiet with specific master plant teachers, and cleaning out our vessel, and then we start writing the book in January.
You are not afraid, dear. You are not afraid. Between plant medicines, water only, don't be around me if I do that, to darkness retreats, to all the different things, you're not afraid, and I love that. When is it going to come out? Do you know the date?
February of 2026.
February 2026. I look forward to that. As well as you sneak peeking me at least like 2 pictures maybe or something like that. Maybe I'll just swing by unannounced.
Definitely.
Walk into the room.
I really want you to come and see what's going on. People walk in, they're like, ah!
But we're on a powerful day today. So I'd love to wrap up with just, this is 888 Lionsgate portal here. So, and you've been drawing, as you pointed out the other night, and you're like, oh, we're doing this interview on the Lionsgate. I'm like, yeah. And you're like, and I've been drawing lions my whole life. And I'm like, God, you have
a giant mural of lion next to my bed.
That's actually something that'd be really cool to have you do somewhere.
That'd be so nice.
Commission some art. I love to commission art. Most of my art's commissioned.
Let me give you a mural.
What is it you're calling in? And this, what is there any ritual you're doing today? And most importantly though, like what is it that you're using this energy to create?
First and foremost, super stoked that we get to do this interview on the Lionsgate.
It's so aligned. And you have your white on, and I have my black on, which is also like so much energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
with the yin yang.
As my friend calls me, she's like, "You're so dark goddess energy," and I'm like, "Yes."
It's super synced and aligned. I love it.
So it's the Lionsgate portal today, August 8th, 2024. Adds up to 888. What is the significance of that? What is the Lionsgate?
Well, a portal is, from my awareness, an energetic opening where certain energies are charged. And because it's a lion, the lion is the invitation into our courage to be courageously ourselves. Authenticity, rawness, vulnerability. And so where in our lives are we hiding? Where am I not allowing my vulnerability or my authenticity to shine because I'm afraid of how I'm going to be perceived by others? And how can I reclaim my power back from where I have placed the power in other people's perception of me, which just continues to keep me small? And so how can we utilize the Lionsgate portal, the opening of the energies that are ripe and available during Leo season, for us to stop hiding so our authenticity can shine through by claiming who it is with the I am language, two of the most powerful words in the English dictionary, because you're telling the universe that you already are it. I am stepping into my truth. I am in my full power. I am reclaiming these parts of me that were lost along the way. I am a creative adult, and I am going to step in X, Y, and Z areas so that I can allow my 5-year-old self to give me a massive high five and recognize that's the only version of me that I ever want to impress for the rest of my life is my 5-year-old self. So the Lionsgate is an opportunity for us to step into all the areas that we've been afraid to with the I am language and the affirmations and throw them out into the portal that's available. For me, I am calling in the next evolution of my expression as a woman in this life. I'm moving in from the maiden to the mother archetype, from the maiden mother into crone. The maiden thinks that the grass is greener on the other side. The maiden is pretty whimsical, but does not stay long enough for allowing the grass underneath her feet to grow. She thinks that happiness lies somewhere else, is kind of not really sure in her identity and is looking outside of herself for a sense of self of who she is. This is the general archetype of the maiden. The mother is the frequency of knowing herself deeply rooted, and is now tending to the garden that's beneath her feet and really nourishing not only herself, her body, her creations, but also the people around her, knows who she is and has a very clear sense of direction of where she's moving, and does not believe that the grass is greener on the other side, but only where you water it and where you really are just putting your attention and intention. And so for me, how that relates to me personally, just purchased a home. And this is the first time I've ever owned any piece of property or anything really. And so that in itself is energetically really shifting me into a deeper level of nourishing what's right beneath my feet and being a steward of land, being in a beautiful committed relationship that I am moving into the next stage of this relationship with, and really taking everything to the next level with nourishing my body, mentally, physically, spiritually, sexually, financially, and multidimensionally across all planes of existence, to really, really, really know how to then serve the people around me and to take care of my people really well. And this energy of me, for me now, is to be unapologetic in my words and my action, and to be meticulous with my words so that they can create the world that I would like to pass to my children at some point. I don't have children yet, but I would like to prepare my vessel to allow myself to be the steward of life, and it would be the greatest honor of this life, I believe.
You'll practice being a portal tonight, maybe?
Huh? Yeah. We're just going to get our titties out in a full moon and we're going to call in the babies. So this is kind of my intention for this, like, stepping in of the Lionsgate, and how I'm going to be living that out tonight is that I'll be writing down my intentions, and I'll be building an altar specifically for this prayer, and sitting with the directions and sitting with the people that I love, and singing and praying in a good way, and just really utilizing this energy that's available right now to send a wish out into the wishing portal with intention and attention, because those two pieces together create magic.
Oh, and so it is.
So it is.
We did it.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.